it. So we'll get started here for you. Thanks for getting here. I know some of you are on your different schedules than you normally are. Some of you are coming from other schools, other jobs. Some of you are going to work tonight. So I really appreciate, and I'm so happy to see all of you. So I just want to make sure that, as you guys are coming in, that we just realize how long it's been since we've been together. And I think for me, this is really a big deal. And I'm really, really happy to see all of you. I'm really happy that we can all be together and have this opportunity to move forward in our, bringing kids back into the space. So that's a big deal. And so I really am appreciative of you guys coming. I know I've got another group coming this evening and everything. So for those of you that know you have coaches in the program, we're going to work on getting the link out. That's based totally on Mr. Steele's schedule and how quickly we can get that out. We'll have it out by at least tomorrow morning. So a couple of coaches that talked to me personally, I told them we'd try to have the YouTube link by this evening. If we don't, I'll make sure that email thread that everybody's on, everybody will get the link by no later than tomorrow morning. So just make sure that they know that. So I'm going to ask Mr. Jimenez, our principal, to come up and just kind of kick us off, and then we'll get right into our content for today, and I'll make sure we introduce everybody else that'll speak to you. So, Mr. Jimenez?
Thank you, Mr. DeSaul. First of all, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I just want to take a quick opportunity to say how thankful we are. The work that you guys do, not only many of you, both in the classroom, out on the field, on the court, outside of the classroom as well, it's just absolutely amazing. So as a former coach myself, many years at the high school level too, I understand the level of commitment and the work that you have to do. It's great to see so many of you. I think the majority of you, I had conversations with, and I know that when I get a chance to be there on the sideline and cheer the team as well, it's a great opportunity to do that. So just thinking of this here right now, also just really looking at that opportunity, and I know you're excited to hear the details. So basically, again, just want to welcome you, say thank you for everything that you do. Look forward to having a successful transition. A lot of what we're going to end up doing the rest of the year will depend on this initial steps as we go through it. So that's going to be important. And just one housekeeping item really quickly. If you do not speak, also if we have questions later on and things come up, we need to make sure that we speak into the microphone, otherwise it will not be recorded, or we need to repeat the question through the microphone so that everybody can hear it on the recording, and that'll be okay. So again, good afternoon, and thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Mr. Jimenez. All right. So I'm going to work on the presentation with a couple of folks that give us a ton of help here in Beaumont Unified. So I'd like to introduce Marisa Evans. A lot of you know her through a risk management. And Robert Romero is here also, and he helps to advise districts all around the area through our Joint Powers Authority. So they're going to help us with some of these things. As you have questions, please, put a hand up. We will go ahead and repeat those just because we're recording this for coaches that can't be here. So I just want to start us out with thank you guys. This is our first opportunity to meet. It's our opportunity to look at the things we would normally do, except this is such a different year. So we want to be resilient this year. That's going to be something we're talking to our kids about. We're trying to figure things out where kids and their situations at home are absolutely a zoo. And that's something that you guys are seeing more than any of us. And you understand the situations at home, the kids that are having to go to work, okay, during the day. Kids that are trying to take care of little siblings, little cousins, little nephews and nieces. Those are all things that are going on. So we're in a totally different area, okay? One thing that I know is not on this slide right now is we are not going to hold any kids out of conditioning sessions over these next 2 months based on this first quarter's grades. We're trying to figure a lot of stuff out. So we're not checking an eligibility list for them to show up on Monday or for the winter, spring sports to show up in November, and we do not have that date yet. So just please understand that. We're not going to limit kids getting out of their houses. when they need to be with you so that you can help push them through their academics. So we are going to adapt and advance. That's what we're going to try to do. We're going to treat this like a tournament where you just got to win and move forward. So you got to win Monday. And whatever that Monday looks like, I didn't get my full workout in. My God, I thought kids were going to die out there because they've been out of shape for 6 months. Whatever Monday looks like, we're going to win Monday. And then we're going to win Tuesday, and we're going to move forward. And that's really our idea. So your themes this year, as we look at that, resilience. We want to help kids come back from all of the stress, all of the things that they are deformed by right now. Their mental side, their physical side, their emotional side, all of those pieces need you, okay? So that's kind of our kickoff there. Adapt and advance, just win the day. What we're trying to do in this is give a safe and secure learning environment, okay? That is the biggest thing for us in this space. We are batting leadoff. We are the opportunity to come back and put ourselves in a position to be successful for all these students coming back. They've got friends that cannot wait to come back in November. We're going to put them in a leadership role over this next 4 weeks, that they get a chance to set the foundation, put that first brick in the path, and move forward so that we have the opportunity to get them back. And so that's a big, big thing for them, that they understand that. You've got to set that example. Each and every day we're going to talk about masks, physical distancing, okay? All of that stuff is vital, okay? Today and for the next however long we're in this, I don't care what your political viewpoint is. I could not care less, okay? It doesn't matter to me what your vote is in November. I don't care how you feel about masks or social distancing right now, okay? This is what has to happen right now. And if that, okay, gets relaxed as we move forward, that's going to be the only way we're putting kids on buses. We're putting kids in close spaces, putting them back in weight rooms and gyms. So this has to be successful for 4 weeks, okay? There is no bias, there is no anything, okay, in terms of what we're sharing with kids. This has to be modeled, and this is going to be what is going to make us successful, okay? Our leadership excellence, most of you have seen this slide before at some point because I put it in each of our athletic department presentations, okay? Our voice is the loudest, okay? I don't care what anybody says, okay? You're the most important department on this campus, okay? I've said that since I started. The biggest thing that you have to understand is this is the opportunity for you to reinsert yourself in the lives of these kids as the significant adult for them, because a lot of them have really lacked that over these last few months. So please remember that. And then remember, it's not about the win. It's not about the game. It's not about the end of the journey. It's about who's willing to put in the time. And that time starts today. Okay, it started for most of you on March 18th or 19th, when you started reaching out to kids and figuring out what in the world is this Zoom thing. Holy mackerel, how am I going to get kids out in this space, and how am I going to contact them, and how are they going to be, how am I going to keep them safe? And most of you have kept contact for 6 full months with these student athletes, and they are blessed to have you in their lives. So please make sure that you understand the role that you are returning to and how vitally, okay, important you are in their lives, okay? So we're going to kind of move forward. Here's our agenda, all right? Some of the things we're going to talk about today is what does conditioning look like? And I'll share little things here and there with you from other schools and ADs that are telling us about what some of the key points are in coming back, how we're going to help them come back and get them in good habits for participation. Our response, what happens, Coach, what happens if somebody comes back with a COVID concern at home, or they come back and, man, on Monday, they come in and they didn't self-screen because they're sneezing, they've got watery eyes, and their nose is running, and they've got a temperature. All those things we're going to go through today and talk about CDC, some of the legislation that is involved in this, what we're going to work on with our maintenance and custodial department, as well as our training staff, which is going to include student sports medicine students, okay? So make sure that we're disinfecting and helping you guys out, our liability and our waivers, okay? So I think I'm going to turn this over here to Marisa or Robert, who would like to start kind of going through this. We're going to do our best to not read slides to you. You should have hopefully read through the protocols for you as a staff to come back. And then this is going to be an outline of all the things that we're going to highlight and then walk you through. If you have a question, man, put your hand up. Let us answer that right now while something's fresh in your mind so that we get a chance to make sure that Monday has as little fear and stress for you as possible, okay? So who's up? Marisa?
I'll take it. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Just to kind of give you an overview of what it took to put this together, countless hours. And we started this back in June-ish, yeah. So bringing folks into the room, having hundreds and hundreds of pages to go through regarding CDC guidelines. What's the health department say? What's Dr. Kaiser at the county gonna say? Are the orders out? Did the orders change? And then we developed something completely changed a week later. So it's a very fluid situation, and I think that as long as we're cognizant of that, the response to COVID cases may change at any given time. The 14-day quarantine, the 10-day quarantine, now it's back to 14. So because those change so frequently, we get the updates the minute that they happen, and you guys will get those updates as soon as they happen, and we'll send that out in a blast email to say, hey, something has changed. So as of August 3rd, no competition public events. We went through this entire phase of nobody's allowed in the space. No one's allowed to be next to each other. Everybody has to wear a mask. Outdoor physical distancing, stable cohorts. We're going to be talking about that. So we actually have some slides in here of the football field and what those cohorts can look like. And that's in any given space throughout any field on the campus, okay? So as long as you have your cohort, what that looks like for rotations and disinfecting. So face coverings for all coaches at all times. I think just to let you know, I have to, admit failure because I didn't think of it, and I'm the one that helped create the reopening plan for the district. And so I'm on a Zoom meeting, right? And it's a meeting with an entire school campus, and we're talking about, environmental hazards that have come up, et cetera, and I don't have a mask on, but I'm in a space and I have my colleague next to me. So not only am I the person that wrote it, I got called out because they're like, even though she's in a Zoom meeting, she's still in a space with another person, she should have a mask on. And they were right? So I have to follow that. And modeling this for kids, I think, is gonna be vital. If they see us not wearing a mask at any given time, then they're gonna think it's okay for them not to wear it. So we'll go through what that looks like. Heavy exertion and masks, that's not gonna work, right? So one of the major concerns just from district administration and the board was, what does it look like when they are, they have heavy exertion? If they take their masks off, are we gonna spread them out? So we said, yes, we'll spread them out even more. They'll more than 6 feet, the mask comes off, they're gonna be able to breathe because that's gonna be a huge concern for us, right? But yeah, that's a concern on their end, and can that be maintained? So having that in the back of our heads when we're putting these things together, and these kids have heavy exertion, then spreading them out even more. And the point was behind my story that I got caught doing something, but I didn't realize it at the time. There was no ill intent on my part to have a mask off. So I never know who's watching, right? And just being mindful of that. It's important for us to know that anybody at any given time, if it's in writing, then that's what we should be following, okay? So individual conditioning, skills focused. We were really concerned about kids being in this deconditioned status. I know my own daughter is at home and she's not getting all the PE time that she should have, right? Or being active at school. So I think every kid's in that situation, and bringing them back slowly and focusing on the skills that they do have and trying to enhance those. Sports specific, individual equipment only. We were talking about Martin was mentioning if they have their mountain bike, then that's their mountain bike. They can't share bikes. If it's their personal piece of equipment, that's the equipment that can be used, but no sharing of equipment amongst students. So we'll be talking about that in just a few. and then written policies about safety measures and guidelines for activities. So we have all of that stuff for you. If there's ever a question, we're available. Email, text, cell phone. You can call me anytime or reach out to Martin. So I'll give you that information at the end of this presentation. So some of the things for coaches, trainers, parents, students, basically, essentially are the same, but I mean, I won't read this to you, but coaches have those 4. Trainers have those 4. Parents, again, the one thing that parents are going to be concerned about is how are you keeping my child safe while they're in your care, custody, and control? And so just letting them know that that's our intent. That's our first intent, is to keep them safe while they're here with us. And we want to reiterate that to them constantly. So I know students, they're going to be, I mean, we had this conversation the other day, didn't we, Martin, about how when a kid feels like they lead something, it makes them feel purposeful. And so if these kids that participate in this conditioning program for 4 weeks know that they're the reason why other kids get to come back to the space, that's pretty intense. And if we push that message and they lead that, then I think we're going to be just fine with this. So, protocols for participation. Another one of the concerns that was brought up was the congregating before and after. So we all know that when kids see their friends outside of the athletic complex or being dropped off on the north parking lot, they're going to want to talk to their friends. So it's really important that we push to them that they need to maintain that 6 feet of distance, doing air high fives or whatever that looks like that you want to share with them, those different practices, because if they're next to each other and people see that, then that's going to be like, oh, they brought kids back to school, but they're not, enforcing the rules to prevent COVID from happening or prevent exposure to COVID. And so then that message goes out on social media, right? Because that becomes their reality, and then it's all over the place. Beaumont USD doesn't care, and we don't want to push that message. So we want to push the message to kids. You have to maintain all of the protocols associated to that. So congregating before and after, as soon as you're dropped off, you need to go towards your cohort. As soon as conditioning session is over, you need to be picked up right away. Communicating to parents and guardians regarding the cohorts. So 12 is the max for each cohort, and each coach will have those 12. Cohort setup ideas, culture and leadership. I think it's really important that you guys share those ideas amongst yourselves, because we're not going to know what this looks like or what the challenges are when these kids come back to the space, what kind of support they're going to need. And some of you may have great ideas that we haven't even thought of, because you're out there, you're the feet on the ground, you're the masterminds. And so if there's something that you need from us as far as safety, anything having to do with culture building, if you need additional training for students or whatever that looks like, we're here to support you in that endeavor, because we need this program to be successful. And then cohorts cannot intermingle. So again, going from station to station, and then what that looks like for disinfecting in between. If you're using, and some of the equipment, I wouldn't even know because I'm not out there, but Martin, can you talk to that? Like, what are those things we were talking about?
Yeah, I think, like we've talked about with cones, pads, things of that nature, where kids are going through, or using tires down at the stadium or things of that nature. So if there's anything that is used just in a common space where they're not touching it with their hands, okay, then trainers, our sports med students, those types of kids, they can come by in between as you switch groups that are going to use that station, spray it off real quick, okay, away we go, okay? So it's not common use equipment in terms of like my hands are on it, so.
Okay.
Use in the space.
And then we will be supplying those disinfecting spray bottles or whatever it is that you need. So attendance for each cohort is required daily, but we have to very strongly say that if kids are out of conditioning due to COVID or being symptomatic, it's not counted against them, okay? And then tracking the absences. So we created a spreadsheet that can track COVID cases. Just kind of throwing in the legislative law that came down, SB 1159 says that we have to report every positive COVID case. We also have to track the percentage of COVID cases. So if there is a positive COVID case and there's 4 in any given cohort or program, and we have between 5 and 100 students, that's considered an outbreak. And then the decision needs to be made whether we are closing down the program for 14 days to quarantine it, or we have to, is it the school that closes? So there's some very strict guidelines on what that means. If it's over 100 students at any given location, then it's 4% of the population testing positive for COVID. So just so you know that that's out there, we have to track it for staff as well. So in any given 14-day period, if there are 4 COVID cases amongst staff, then we have to quarantine. So, and it would be considered an outbreak. And there's reporting requirements not only to CDC, but we also have to report that to our third-party administrator. So all of those logistical nightmare things, we're working out between risk management and human resources. So if you have questions about that, just let us know and we can help guide you through it. The other piece is your tracking on those monthly forms. If you do have COVID positive cases, that those need to be reported right away. Symptoms, if you're sending a kid home with symptoms, so we'll go over that. And if a kid calls and says, hey, I have family members at home that tested positive for COVID, what's our response going to be to that? So this is the form that you should have picked up out on the table. And this is the best way that we could put it together, getting that much time on a calendar. So students' names, but tracking daily on those dates. Are they here? Are they absent, or were they sent home with COVID symptoms? Was there no attendance to having signs and symptoms, or they were exposed? They have a known exposure to COVID at home. So as soon as we know about a COVID positive case, please inform Martin, and then we will start that tracking process. And then also, if you notice that 1 or 2 or 3 students within your cohort have COVID or have symptoms or have an exposure at home, even documenting those things, because if they come up positive, we have to track those as part of the 4 students. So one of the things that we were talking about, and this is forthcoming, we're almost done developing it, but the parent information sheet. So when you call a parent and you say your child has been removed from the cohort, we didn't want to use the language isolate, because to isolate a student sounds very abrasive. But removed your child from their cohort, and you need to pick them up right away because they're showing signs and symptoms. One of the things that we talked about was creating this parent information sheet. So regardless of whether, and we'll send it to you electronically, so you're able to send it out to your parent. If you have somebody that has an exposure, giving them exact process for return to play. They're gonna need to know, what do I have to have? How many days does my child have to quarantine? When they're done quarantining or they don't have signs and symptoms anymore, what do I do? So that information sheet can either be sent to the parent via email or by paper if you have a child that you've removed from a cohort with signs and symptoms and you're sending them home. You can provide them with that document so that parents know what to do. Do you want to do this one? Is this you, Martin?
Okay, so as we're looking at our calendars and everything, what I'm going to hope for from all of the fall coaches is that sorry, get to the microphone. Got it, Karen. Sorry. Good call. All right, so coaches for fall, what we want by the end of this week or even over the weekend, I'll work with you. Get me a calendar. What does your time frame look like for practices? Okay, so if you have a practice session with your first set of cohorts from 3 to 4 o'clock, and the next one is 4 to 5 o'clock, or whatever it may be. Lay that out, let me know. Okay, now I should also be able to see your attendance sheets in terms of, like, okay, cohort 1 is this group of 12 kids. Then we assign this group to cohort 2 and this group. So back to that slide previously, the question came up, as we're thinking about putting our groups together. Some of you have already done this, okay? But maybe there is the call there for some of your older kids to be with some of the younger kids in a cohort, okay? Yeah, it may seem very like, okay, varsity, then JV, and then freshmen should be together separately in cohorts. You may want to use this as a culture building point for your program to be able to put some kids together and get them used to, especially without doing skill type activities. Okay, you're doing everything to bring them back into a conditioning and fitness phase. So think about that part of it. So you're going to give me some information about what does your practice schedule look like. If we're going to ask parents to pick their kids up because they cannot congregate, then we need to get them out on time. So make sure you've got a calendar for the next 4 weeks kind of laid out and set up. Not that that may not adjust, because remember, we may get 45 minutes out of them the first week, and then that moves up 15 minutes every week to where I can add a little more time, okay? We're doing Mondays through Friday only right now, so that Monday, October 12th, we cannot be here on campus. We're not going to open. There's no custodians to help with sanitizing or anything else. No Saturdays right now, so for the next 4 weeks, it's going to be Monday through Friday. I'll review calendars with you. You're going to talk to me, and I've already met with a couple of groups so far. I just want to know where you're going to be. I want to know what your entry and exit is going to be for kids to come into the area, how you're going to set them apart and get them into their cohorts those first couple of days, what your time frame is, and then I'm going to make sure you get assigned restrooms. That's going to be really important because we're going to try to keep groups apart in terms of your restroom use. That is going to help the maintenance department. We're responsible for them from the time they get there to the time they leave. So the goal would be, once I'm done with my first group, okay, let's take volleyball for instance, and if Coach Jess is out there with Jody and with Haley, okay, and they each are, okay, we're done with our group, okay, we're going to get them out, okay, we're going to get them out of the area that we're working in so that I can get them to where they should be picked up. All right, and that's where we're just telling them, guys, give yourself some space until your parent gets here. And then you're going, and they're going to have another session, and they're going to grab their next 3 groups or whatever it may be. And they're going to walk over, and they're going to get started into their workouts with that group. You don't have to stand over with the kids until they get picked up, okay? We're just going to help them understand those first couple days. Don't stand around, okay? And don't clump up in a big group. You know, we've talked with football already. They all like to sit out on some of those little cement benches in front of the concession stand. They can't right now. So the coaches, they're going to switch groups off from visitor and guest sides is how they're going to bring kids in and out. For the pool, we're going to bring kids in through the attendance gate. And then the boys are going to exit out the boys' locker room hallway, and the girls are going to exit out of the girls' locker room hallway, okay? Cross country and volleyball will be on campus. They cannot use the pool deck restrooms. They're going to be assigned different restrooms. So we're trying to make sure that we put everybody in as safe a space as possible and let our maintenance and custodians know exactly what we're doing so they can help us with being clean, okay? You want me to keep going?
Yeah.
I can keep going, okay. So guys, the only thing we're going to kick a kid out for, okay, is I show up with no mask, and I'm just not taking things seriously, okay? Then I'm going to send a kid home. We're got to set that tone. It's not a gotcha situation. It's a safety situation. But we're not going to look for that first day, like, are they going to be excited and want to, you know, run up and, oh, man, I saw you two give each other a high five or a hug, go home. No. We're going to live with that, and we're going to get through those first couple of days where we're out there again when they arrive. That's when we're responsible for them. So get out there. Let them know, hey, guys, hey, no hugging right now. Just let's get organized. Here's group 1, 2, and 3. We're going to get them. If you need blue tape, man, come see me and Carrie. We'll get you blue tape. Whatever you need to do, okay, put cones out with numbers on them, whatever it is, okay? They have to have their face coverings on when they get there, when they get out of their car. They have to have their face coverings on as they come in and you get them organized into their area, okay? Stretch, do your warm-up, and then once you're into anything where you're exerting, okay, masks are off, okay? And I know we're going to be out in the heat and everything. Coaches, you do not have to wear your mask when you're out in the middle of it with them, but you're socially distanced too. There's no difference between you and them, okay? So if we're now into an activity and I've got them spread out and I've got to yell to them and tell them where they're going and what this next exercise looks like, you don't have to have your mask on, okay? That's one of those things that where if we are physically distanced at that point, okay, that's going to be the thing. Once I bring them back into like, hey, I'm going to explain this next exercise, this next plyometric drill, this next station, okay, yeah, masks should be on once we've closed our space back up again. Once you get into that heavy exertion, spread them out a little bit more, okay, and make sure that they have more than 6 feet and that they're in a position where they understand that they're getting new habits built over these first, couple of days, okay? I think that's that slide. They're responsible for coming safe and healthy. They are responsible for bringing their own stuff. Come ready to practice. They don't need a bunch of gear. If they bring one of their little drawstring bags or something, fine, okay? But they're bringing their own water bottle. They're bringing a face covering, okay? And then when they're done, they're leaving, okay? No locker rooms are available, no weight rooms, no gyms, okay? We want them to understand that they have got to be responsible, even in their times where, hey, I get to go to the restroom. Okay, go to the restroom. We're not going to watch them. We're not going to walk them to a restroom. We're not going to walk them down and keep the doors locked. The restroom's going to be open for whatever your group is, okay? They go use the restroom. There's going to be those natural times you're going to have groups cross paths. We talked about the stadium, okay? You may have 4 or 5 cohorts out doing things. I may not know that another coach sent a kid to the bathroom. Okay, we're not going to micromanage that stuff, okay? It's going to happen. Just make sure that the kids understand that as we set these protocols that they take it for what it is, and that is, again, a leadership point to come back, okay? We got to make sure we're telling them, reminding them to be physically distant, reminding them to make sure that they're washing their hands, and that we'll have hand sanitizer available if they need it. They are expected to bring their own, however, okay? So make sure of that. In an emergency situation, you're going to have the trainers around and the sports med kids as well, okay? Conditioning sessions, please help monitor those first couple days especially of how they're exiting or getting out to the parking lot. It's not up to you to control if they ride home together. It's not up to you to set up carpools and make sure, oh shoot, that freshman can't get in that car with that senior. That's not our business, okay? That is something that parents have got to figure out how they're going to get their students home. So it's not like, oh, wait a minute, do you have, no. If that student is going home, okay, with another student and their family, that's been pre-set up. That is up to those parents, okay? Something we discussed a lot going into this is we know they've been wanting to go and have been out at the parks. They're playing basketball across the street every day, okay? Cross-country kids have been running all over town, all right? They're out doing stuff. They're at each other's houses. You're going to have kids from 2 different cohorts that ride there together. We understand that. Our job is in our space to enforce these protocols. Same thing I've talked to other ADs about. Get them there safely, okay? Get them exited from your activity safely, monitor them and remind them of everything they need to do. And then, again, we have a limitation as to everything we can do with them. Go ahead.
I'd just like to say, regarding personal liability, so one of the things that Martin's talking about is if we are instructing kids, if we have our letterhead, anything having to do with your affiliation with Beaumont Unified School District, performing essential functions in the scope of those essential functions, any communication going to kids, that is district sponsored. That's the way that California looks at it. So if you have them going out to, basketball courts and doing those types of things, and it's on your advisement, there's personal liability in that if anything happens to them because you're acting in the scope of performing essential functions for the district, and it's also the district's liability, and we can be sued for that. And then there have been lawsuits where employees are named in lawsuits, okay? So just to protect yourself, be sure that anything that's affiliated with what you're leading as a Beaumont USD employee is in conjunction with the protocols and processes that we're showing you today, okay? And that protects you.
All right, so Robert or Marisa, do you want to go over this
Yeah, I can
with
jump
them?
on this one.
Whichever one you
And then
guys want.
Robert, maybe you want to pipe in on any advisement that you have here. So, we narrowed it down to 3 scenarios. COVID-19 symptoms before attending, COVID-19 symptoms during practice session, and then exposure to COVID-19 or a test positive for COVID-19. So the CDC just put out their guidelines on the 23rd, which were new, again, and we looked at it. Coincidentally, this was in alignment because we thought, you know what, we're gonna go above and beyond. We're not gonna just do the 10 days, or if they're not showing signs and symptoms, they can come back. If they have exposure at home to somebody who has positive COVID, they need to quarantine. And then that's what the new guidelines said on the 23rd. So it was coincidental that we wrote it that way, but the one thing that we added at the end of it is that in order for students to return to play, they will need to contact you, the coach, and then you can provide them with a return date. They can either provide a negative COVID test after they've quarantined, or 72 hours from the date they contact you to say, I finished my quarantine and I'm sign and symptom free. So that 72-hour window, it's in stone unless they have that negative COVID test after their quarantine period is complete, okay? So some of the other things that we were talking about is what happens if you have somebody with signs and symptoms, right? So looking at that, let's start at the beginning, just to say before attending the session, if students contact you to say they have signs and symptoms at home or they think they're feeling icky, they definitely need to stay home. They also, just advising them, it's probably a good idea that you get tested, guys. You know, we can't mandate them to go get tested, but we can definitely advise it, and it's gonna be beneficial for them in that quarantine period as well. And then student athlete waits to show no signs and symptoms, so at the end of the quarantine period, if it's 14 days or 10 days does not matter, because 10 days is 14 days if it's inclusive of the weekends. So we came to that determination at some point to say it's 14 days or it's 10 school days, right? So Monday through Friday, it will be 14 days anyway. At the end of that quarantine period, they have to contact their coach. They cannot return without you guys providing the return date for them, okay? So that informational sheet that we'll give you, there'll be just a coach's name and then how to contact you, whether that's email, how do parents get a hold of you, and I'm sure that your whole cohort will know how to do that, but we want to give them that advisement to say that your child cannot return until they contact the coaches, okay? So if COVID-19 symptoms during practice, removing the student from the cohort, contacting the parent, advising them to get COVID tested, notifying athletic director, and then student athlete waits to show no signs and symptoms, and they go through that process again. So the end process never changes except for the quarantine time, okay? So if they don't have any signs and symptoms and they're providing a negative test, but they still have a positive person with COVID at home, they have to quarantine because that exposure is going through their family member's quarantine period if they're in the same household, okay? But if they've just had maybe an exposure at a birthday party, and they went to a birthday party and there were 2 kids there that had COVID and they had what's called a contact, right? So they can go and get tested. If it's negative, they can come back if they have no signs and symptoms, okay? And then all of these scenarios, it's amazing how many scenarios we came up with, and then they actually have on the CDC website now, they have here's some scenarios. So it's like, if this, then that, if this, then that. And it's a great thing to read and look over. But if you have questions about any particular situation with any one of your student athletes, just contact us and we'll help venture through that. So here's we did the diagram of the football field, but this would be in any space. Again, rotating those cohorts. I think you guys are amazing to try to figure out this scheduling for that, and then the time frames and the dismissal, so they're different, and you're not releasing all students at the same time, that each cohort is released. Maybe it looks like 10 minutes outside of each other, so there isn't that opportunity to congregate afterwards. But logistically, it sounds nightmarish, and I commend you, because we thought this whole entire venture of creating was nightmarish, but we got through it, and it worked. And it was approved, and I think that if we just move forward together and support one another, regardless of what the question is, we'll be here for that. So just maintaining awareness of space, that communication between coaches, if you're in the same field, having that communication with the other coaches on the field. Okay, if you're moving that rotation, maybe it's a timer. I don't know what that looks like for you guys, but developing that schedule is going to help you. And then communicating with coaches and students in the shared space, face coverings being removed. If that happens, letting the students know if that drill that you're running is going by another cohort, it's there. The expectation is that you're maintaining that physical distancing, guys. You know, so as long as we reiterate that, I think it's going to work. And I know Martin is probably going to be out there the first week. I'd like to come and see it too. I think that you guys are going to do great things. One of the things, and I'm sure you guys know this, but COVID has not been proven to spread in water, in swimming pools. So that really helps out some of the, you know, the social distancing thing. We're still going to have to maintain, but as far as equipment and those types of things, it doesn't spread in water. So I think, I mean, do you have anything to add to that? Because chlorine's in the water. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's true. That's just it. Because of the chlorine and the disinfectant properties of it, it doesn't. CDC is just saying that's not an issue right now with swimming.
So did you want to explain this, or they know this is? Okay, super. Do you want to go over this one? Robert's the expert at cleaning and disinfecting.
That's what Marisa says. That's what my wife says too. So, sharing of equipment has been covered already. It's not permitted because it prevents the spread, and we want to do everything we can to prevent contaminating equipment, or if just in case any of the students or any of the staff has might have some infection or possible infection. All the equipment will always have to be sanitized between cohorts. So when you have one group together, and as has already been covered, you know, they move to the next section, the next event, or the next activity that they're doing, before the next group comes in and starts using the equipment, that has to be sanitized. And there's going to be a procedure for that, right? It's just the spraying or however it's done, but just, again, just making sure that that's done. You know that somebody came before the next group got there to make sure that that was disinfected. Cleaning agents will be supplied by M&O. So here's a big one for that. So make sure that nobody brings their own disinfectant from home. You know, everything that you use should be used from the district. And the reason why I say that is because the district is using EPA registered disinfectants. And